Saturday, May 7th, 2022. Watching the CBS local news, not the CBS mornings. And they mentioned about an uptick in children with hepatitis. Now, hepatitis is indicative of liver, but they're blaming it on adenovirus, which is interesting for me because when the R is removed, they say adeno, but if you put an R in there, it's adreno, and then that makes it more of a kidney and the organ on top of the kidney. So now I'm a little confused why this is hitting the children. At the same time, I'm having trouble, and I'm also trying to figure out what the trouble is coming from. If it's internal environmental in the house with one of the food products that Linda buys and feeds the family. Because she started wearing this shape before I arrived back in New York while she was living here. When she was in Cold Spring Harbor, she was much thinner. She didn't get this shape until she moved to Bayside. And I didn't get this shape until I moved back to Bayside. It's something in the area. I just can't put my finger on what it is. They also, I fast forwarded, and I'll do a separate piece on the redheaded meteorologist fellow. He's in, I think, Palisades, New Jersey, and he's going to different, I guess, Asian, they call them Asian, or they refer to themselves as Asian, but they're a different kind of Asian. They're not the Indian Asian. They're a different Asian, which I categorically don't have a word for because they haven't announced themselves at the door with what is acceptable. So it gets confusing how to be respectful. But he said that he's standing in a place and he said, well, he said he was in some Korean run area, and then he looked up and he's teaching the words, like there was like something referring to Shanghai, which he said was more traditionally Chinese, and then next door was Fa or Fo. No, it was Fa. I have to think about this because of the symbols in the glyphs. But he said it was Vietnamese. Now, I have a Pho or Fa here in Bayside, and they also call themselves Vietnamese. But now what's interesting is the one here has one name, but the one where he is in New Jersey has the numerics of 420. So when I went to look up the symbolic gesture and reference, it refers back to something that happened at the Czech Republic in 1993, which I've never even heard of inside New York. There was not a news story, there was no talk about it. In 1993, there was nothing. So I don't know what that fight was over. I don't know how the Czech Republic broke up into Slovakia, why it would. Again, nobody speaks of anything here in the Empire State in New York. So I have no idea how impactful that was. But it does say 420 was the country code 42 was Czechoslovakia. And then 420 was assigned to them And then it says inside of the U.S. that there is no known subscription or ascribing of the numbers 420. So I don't know if that's one of these quiet battles or quiet wars that are being fought, because it's not referenced in the American Revolutionary War papers that the locals have provided. And I don't know where this information is coming from, but it is being propagated from the local school, which has some New York City intervention. I don't know if it's at a federal level, if it's at a U.S. level. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know what the difference is at city level. It's really very difficult to try to navigate and stay safe and keep orientation. But that also, so again, this adreno disease or virus, I don't know who the subscriptor is or prescriptor on whatever they're doing. I mean, I really feel at this point, like, I mean, I feel held captive, and I feel like I'm just some kind of medical tissue sample that's just alive walking around for some bigger pharmaceutical company or some big farm or some big farmer or rancher. It's really disgusting. I mean, there's no benefit to living this way. And then they also, on the BS this morning, they referenced something about Yiddish. I almost cried. Don't know why. I was just looking at the symbols, because the symbols there, they actually had the curator of this place who's trying to save the Yiddish glyphs or the Yiddish cartography. And I'm thinking of my grandfather, who never referred to himself as such that I remember, but he had a draft board in the room that I'm now staying in, like a big architecture draft board, and he would sit in the afternoon in the quiet of the house, because there was no like radio frequency, or there was very little at that year. And I would sit next to him, and I'd try to sit still, and he had quills with ink, and he had such dexterity in his occupational ability to therapy, and I would sit next to him and just admire these beautiful, like, symbols that he would write. And I mean, it was cathartic, but it just, like, the camaraderie, like, just in the still silence of just being next to him, and like next to his energy and next to his persona. I mean, he just was such a quiet, strong man, and watching him in his craft with what he was able to do with his fingers and a quill with a little dip of ink, and asking him to describe, although most of the time he didn't have the words because he didn't speak English very well. English was, I think, the last language that he learned, but then Lewis and Linda took me out of this place where he was and moved me, and then I lost contact with him because, I mean, was no, and then I didn't get to see him again until high school, like right before he died. But I missed like a whole life worth of growing up with someone who could have taught me a lot, and a lot more than what the local schools were teaching. But I missed out on all of that. So anyway, so this morning they had a picture of what New York looked like prior to my arrival, and it was glyphs and symbols, not familiar to my eye, or I don't have sounds for them. I wouldn't even know where to begin or who to ask for help for that. I mean, it's not like Lynn and Lou know, so now it's just lost. And now I'm just lost. And then they mentioned something about a word, Akanazichu. And I'm like, no, why does that sound? If I break that word down, and then they had where they have these like larger symbols and then lesser symbols and in this like artistic format, and I again was just digesting it, and like I don't know these symbols, they're not familiar. Well, they may be familiar, but they're just not. I'm cognitively dissident to it or disconnected from it at the moment. Not because I want to be, just because it's what's going on in New York around me. So that happened this morning. So this is Channel 2, and this is the story about this new hepatitis and liver inflammation, which means it could be some, since the liver's like a filter, it could be some kind of bacteria or bacterium, whether ingested by accident, whether breathed in with this environmental whatever near a big city. I mean, I don't have the proper tools to filter air quality or to run any kind of laboratory tests in order to protect myself against these humans.
Is liver disease in children, 5 of whom have died. The condition was initially detected last fall in Alabama and has now spread to 24 states and Puerto Rico. The CDC is asking doctors to be on the alert for unusual cases of hepatitis. More than 90% of children believed to have had the illness were hospitalized, and 14% underwent a liver transplant. The cause remains unclear, although adenovirus, a common group of viruses, has been detected in about half the cases.
I mean, are they spreading this stuff just to like have pharmaceutical grade like tissues and things? I mean, it's really invasive surgeries that they're doing. I mean, who's keeping an eye on this? They've grown so much. They had another thing on after they show about how Yiddish has practically been wiped out of New York completely. Then they showed some Indian symbols with them coming in and they're writing these words in patterns that are not English. There's some translatable Latin English, but refers to like explosions and all sorts of things. And they're literally sitting there going, we're unapologetically here. And it's just like, right, trying to replace and wipe out other people's culture. I see that. It's really crystal clear. And then to tie into that in real world, it reminds me of the last tenant that Lewis had, who said he was in the Air Force, or no, he said he was in the Navy. He said he had presidential accommodation letters from President Clinton, but nothing that I could verify. He didn't show me the letters. And then his heirs, or his girlfriend's heirs, who are, looks like more descendants of Barack Obama. She was hired into USAF, the U.S. Air Force, but yet I wasn't allowed in, or I wasn't even granted access to them or knowledge of them growing up, nor were my children. So I'm a little confused as to his daughter, though, went to some technical training school within the United States of America borders, and now she's going off to other states and things. This is causing this is on a whole nother scale, really frightening. Like they're building up secretly inside of the United States, however they're getting in, and they're ensuring their sustainability, but they're not participating in a manner where, they're cutting people like myself off from being able to access help such as Army, Navy, or Air Force by whatever it is that they're doing. I would be the living proof part on that one.
A Bergen County, New Jersey man who has battled a rare disease all his life is now inspiring others.
And then here's the meteorologist. He's in Palisades Park, and it's on Channel 2.
Come with heavy rain.
These are the symbols behind. I don't know. I can't personally identify them. I don't know what they are. I've seen them locally, though. That specific kind of glyph, it's got a very specific artwork look to it. I didn't think it looked Korean. It looks like it's not, it's not their traditional glyphs. It looks, I don't know if that's business office. That gets confusing. And then there's a different glyph system up here.
So, again, we're in Palisades Park exploring all things Korean. I thought it might be fun to just take a food tour of Broad Avenue. It's like a cookie met a thing of pudding and they made a baby fish together. At Shilla Bakery, they have shelves chock full of traditional Korean sweets and treats, and they also have what appear to be very Western types of donuts, but no. These are rice flour based, and they're filled with red bean paste, which is very chewy and very sweet. When it comes to dining in Palisades Park, it's about a 70-20-10 split. 70% restaurants, 20% cafe, coffee shops, 10% miscellaneous. Oh, and it's not all Korean. This is Old Shanghai, which specializes in Xiao Long Bao, which is authentic Chinese cuisine. Oh, and right next door, literally right next door, is pho.
Yeah. Now, the pho, I have pho in my neighborhood. He's pronouncing this as pho. They also have this as Saigon, which 420. But again, this is all cryptic. This is all code for something. But here's the symbols.
$4.20, which of course is Vietnamese fine cuisine. They even have Korean-style corn dogs. First, you must consider the corn dog you'll consume. Of course, they have the classic. They've got the spicy, the potato, the crispy rice, the injurmi, but wait.
All right, this is a quick synopsis of what they went over this morning.
James Brown, folks. It's James Brown.
I'm Jeff Glore with Dana Jacobson and Michelle Miller. Coming up this hour, whoever saves one life, it's as if they saved an entire world. So says it.
These, again, those are glyphs that are very specific. And then they showed a book that one glyph had a whole meaning to it, which I found fascinating. But again, they don't teach these simple cultural things. They're not even teaching in New York within my life frame. They've been withholding this level of education. And without it, they withheld it from Lyndon Liu. They withheld it from me. And I have now nothing to pass on to my children. It's a crime all within itself.
An ancient Jewish teaching. Ahead, we'll meet a man who helped save not a life, but a culture and language. Centuries of Yiddish literature almost lost to the ages.
And plenty of Yiddish was once spoken at the Essex Street Market on New York's Lower East Side. Now the market's got a new home with something very new inside.
So now it no longer has Yiddish in it. It has something that is saying and claiming that they're unapologetically something else.
Authentic street food from India. That's earning rave reviews and a slew of honors. We'll hear a modern immigration story and taste some amazing food on the dip.
So this is the front end of immigration. They've created crimes and hatred elsewhere, and now they're here, and they've got big smiles on while they're all doing really nasty things. And it gets difficult because there's some of us who don't even know just how nasty they are underneath the surface. And here's my commercial from this morning. Reminds me of my Peruvian friend because she looks just like her. And when I say friend, it's just someone who acted as if they were my friend for a short period of time amongst humanity. She was kind to my face. I have no idea what happens with stabbing in the back and how humanity takes one act of kindness and then turns it into something horrifically different. But what happens is the woman opens the box, the man gives her a diamond necklace, and she's like, oh my gosh, how beautiful, I should be, whatever. And then her son gives her Fruit Loops on a string. Yesterday I had a somebody special in the Wild Wild West, and he had a leashed donkey, and he's like, I thought this was a stallion. Yeah, no, it's still a jackass and a donkey.
Ah, somebody give me a present! Whether you're celebrating this Mother's Day with jewelry. Oh, Jay, a diamond necklace! Thank you! Or something less sparkly. A necklace made of the Fruit Loops. I love it!
I know they're not exactly diamonds.
No, they're beautiful. Be prepared to spend a pretty penny.
Inflation is really.
And what will I get this Mother's Day? Same thing I get every Mother's Day. Absolutely nothing. When my children were little, they made sure I got something. But now that they've grown up, it means absolutely nothing. That's how disgusting this entire area is. Here's the conversation on wolves out west, which I wish I should only be so lucky to have grown up out in like the Colorado, Montana area where like good, wholesome America may still exist based on some of the footage that they tape. Unlike this hellhole I'm stuck in.
Iworth with Montana's Fish and Wildlife Commission says the new hunting policy has been divisive.
Literally, the community is severing over wolves. That's not a good policy for any agency to create division and tear apart a community.
Are you concerned this could wipe out everything you've worked for?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, Yellowstone's the most famous wolf population in the world. Our study is one of the most recognized scientific studies on wolves. This is a handful of wolves that could change pack dynamics and really affect visitor enjoyment.
The social situation is complex.
As far as a human version, pack dynamics has completely been wiped out in New York. I mean, it's been replaced by something else. I have no idea what.
With so many competing economic interests.
We're the endangered species. And when we're gone, these beautiful ranches, as you're about to see, are going to be subdivided. And there ain't going to be habitat for wolves or elk or any of the wildlife. And that's why we have to have a balance.
The stakes are high for everyone as another hunting season approaches.
Listen to the people who rely on those wolves either for business or for recreation or stock.
You want to talk about hungry in the eye? United Nations just put up figures in New York about a hunger crisis. I've been reporting the same.
Welcome back to CBS Saturday Morning. We begin this half hour with the global hunger crisis triggered by the war in Ukraine. On Friday, the United Nations World Food Program called for ports in southern Ukraine to be reopened in order to export the country's surplus of grain needed to feed millions of people around the world. The UN estimates that the war could cause the number of humans facing acute hunger to rise by 47 million to 320.
Now, is that stealing their supplies to feed other overpopulated nations that really need population control? Or, I mean, like, it gets confusing in this World Food Hunger Program with the United Nations and what I see calling itself a United States president inside the United Nations that is not the guy that sits in the White House. I have no idea how she's able to function by herself. And here we are.
23 million worldwide. Ukrainian farmers, meanwhile, are facing far more problems than where to send their harvests. Chris Livesay reports.
Now, this is interesting. My Aunt Judy, who was something called a lunch lady, she worked within the Catholic diocese. She worked at Chaminade within the Catholic Diocese of Long Island, or I don't know if that's Rockville Center, if that's the Manhattan Timothy Dolan or Cardinal Timothy Dolan. I don't know. Again, she was growing up. She took care of me. I was her main priority. And then when I moved away, or when Linda and Lou took me away, she had her own son, and she worked as a lunch lady at Chaminade. And her husband was in charge of the bus fleet and lead mechanic. So she served food to the upcoming next generational children within this area. And it was an all-boys school, which I know is very important. Whatever. So, but she, for some reason, her last car was the most odd shade. When she got it, she was like, she was so excited. And it was, I knew it was a Ford. I now see a picture of it. The U.S. Marshals, apparently this woman, something White and Tim White, she let him out of a prison or whatever, some jailhouse romance, I don't know, their getaway car. It turns out their getaway car looks just like Aunt Judy's. I don't know what that's about, but I think at U.S. Marshal territory, that's important.
In Lauderdale County, Alabama, says investigators found the abandoned getaway.
So they say they're of no relation, but both their last name is White, White. And this is where they found, I haven't really been following. Alabama jail escape. Nationwide manhunt for murder suspect and jail official is what it says.
Getaway vehicle used by an inmate and the jailhouse official suspected of helping him escape. The car was discovered in an impound lot in Bethesda, Tennessee, about 100 miles from the jail. It was there for nearly a...
It is the strangest shade of orange. She's died, so I have no idea whatever happened to her car, but it's just weird to see a tie-in or something from a deceased family member that's now referenced on this publication for whatever reason.
A week before police were able to connect it to the escape. The nationwide manhunt appears to have yielded few other clues in the disappearance of Casey White, a man wanted for murder, and Vicky White. The two are not related, but are believed to have had a jailhouse romance.
Shocker.
Bizarre story.
Yeah, this is
Bizarre.
Remember in northern New York, they had the incident?
Yeah.
I remember covering that and just thinking.
Dannemora.
I have no idea what she covered. I'm in New York, but she was covering. I mean, again, they've given out journalistic passes to all of these, whatever. I mean, the two that are now taking up this Essex market in Manhattan that wiped out the Yiddish market, they both claim that, I mean, they actively say they're not from around here. They were born elsewhere, raised elsewhere, and now they're here. And her reporter, and she was there, actually, she's the one covering that story as well. She's also been the one who's had a full access pass to, like, inside the United States of America, while I wasn't even given the possibility of being a journalist. I mean, again, I don't know who's writing their future guide plans and whatnot, but somebody forgot to write me one and to say, here, this is where you're going, this is what you're supposed to be doing, and have at it. I don't understand why that is. It's not even the same level of care. Now, my grandmother was born in West Virginia, and then they took her for I don't know what reason to Italy or South Austria at that time. I don't know what it was called. It was something Austrian-Hungarian, and then at some point they called it Northern Italy. And they always made sure to say it was Northern Italy, not Southern Italy. And so I do not know any of her relatives from West Virginia. I don't know why. I wouldn't know how to find them. But I'm seeing today they have a thing on about John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And I have an airport in my local New York area named after him. But the schools here don't even mention him. When I was growing up, there was no, like, book report required to learn something about a family member. The only thing I did was Walt Disney. But I didn't, because again, I don't know, I needed names and, like, information. And they were like, just pick something. What are you into? I'm like, I'm not into anything. Like, I mean, pick a main character, ancestry from history. I have no idea. You have a list? Can I go over a list? You have, like, I mean, there's nothing spoken at home. I have a guy and a girl. The girl is sometimes home, mostly working, and the guy leaves for whatever. I mean, like, and I don't really have much conversation time with him. So, like, there's no talking after hours. There's nothing to pick up on. So anyway, so they have a thing on, it looks like they know their own political history or reasons or socio-political, like, their community stuff. I wasn't even given that much in New York. I was an only child, and I had two parents that were constantly working in opposite directions and spent very little time with me.
Top story this hour. West Virginia Republicans will have to choose between two familiar faces when they vote in primary elections this week. The state once had 3 congressional districts, but lost a seat following the 2020 census.
So now as an adult, since they wasted my entire life in a school system that didn't fruit or finish in some kind of pathway to success, and I have struggled and failed the entire time, I am now sitting here at 43 looking for answers, and the only thing I have is this channel and this possibility. But again, the information is so, I don't know. I don't know what its purpose was, why it was allowed, who's behind it. what's threaded through it, what their expectations are at human intelligence. And then I look for the Hollywood version, like the Hollywood version, where everybody's the same shade of tulip. And I look for super intelligence to kind of anchor myself between human intelligence and super intelligence at they're able to work at this level at some together for some reason. And then there's the storyline that I know in universal prowess is extremely important, and I can see pieces of my real reality in some of the artistic creations that they've made. What the problem is the infractions, and I use that word arithmically and arithmetically in an ecola, because there's distinction between infractions and this sour landscape where they think everything is ours and they try to divide it up in some kind of piece or sharing. And then they cause further issues and wait, that's my piece of the pie. That's my piece of the pie. Well, then why didn't you align it properly from the start? I got a kid in the field that needs help, and Mr. Green and Mr. Blue and all their infractions are not supposed to compile and oppress the kid in the field that needs help. At what point does she get the help she needs? Just curious.
Now, two sitting members of the House are pitted against each other for a shot at one of the remaining seats. Alex Mooney and David McKinley are both Republicans vying for the state's second congressional seat. And the issue that most divides them is McKinley's support of President Biden's $1 trillion infrastructure bill.
This has been years of poor leadership, poor campaigning, poor family camaraderie, poor family communication, some outside foreign body pushing up on the family on the inside, on the interior, and it's coming to a head and a culmination, and it's a real effing problem, if I can be really frank and hungry in the eye, because I am.
Scott McFarland has the story.
Towering above the Monongahela River in Star City, West Virginia, stands a 27-foot memorial honoring President John F. Kennedy, with a bronze statue of the 35th president and a young saluting JFK Jr. But much of this state is also a monument to him.
I come here to this state on this occasion asking for your support.
Kennedy canvassed the Mountain State in his 1960 presidential primary race, seeking and winning a pivotal victory here. And immediately after taking office, Kennedy lined West Virginia with a fresh bounty of bridges, bypasses, and buildings. This goes...
So now, here's the thing, because I'm not politically connected. I mean, I have ancestry that looks like it's politically connected to this area, but I don't know any of them. There's been no family reunions. There's no, like, call the kid up, invite her out. Let's get to know her. Let's teach her who we are, what we're all about, where we see ourselves in the future, what we got going on. Let's give her some kind of employment and keep her close. There's been none of that. I have no idea why. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way Universe, Galaxy is broken. In Speyside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.